Hello everyone, it's Deliver here from the clan Toxic, and I'm going to be bringing you another tutorial, and today is going to be a ZvT on Lost Temple. And the reason why I wanted to, bring a ZvT tutorial up is because, you don't see too many of these online at all. Like, you might see a couple, like, opening strategies, like how to open this way or that way versus Terran, but you don't see too many tutorials that are a full game long telling you, some tips on how to play the macro game with Terran. And I think the matchup it's probably one of the better understood matchups in all of StarCraft 2 right now. That is Terran versus Zerg. But I don't think people understand it quite fully, like the general population of players. Like, they might understand how to open in the matchup, or maybe some, play into the mid game, but they're not really, they don't know how to basically use Zerg's advantages in the late game to their full potential. So that's one of the focuses that I'm going to have in this video, is to just try to talk about the macro game between Zerg and Terran. This is going to be a macro orientated replay. Yeah, so right now I'm going to do the 14 hatch build, and this build is pretty safe against Terran, especially considering our positions, our cross positions on this map. If you notice, I said it's a bad build to do against Protoss for the most part. I mean, you can do it, you can pull it off in some scenarios depending on how aggressive the Protoss wants to be, but against Terran, there's not really too much they can do to really screw you in the early game. They can put bunkers up, so you have to have it's generally a really good idea to put an Overlord in this position, how I have it here. That's going to spot for any bunkers around the back of the minerals, or any bunkers, in front of your base at all. But if you can prevent them from bunker rushing you, it's a pretty safe opening. It is a little bit vulnerable to the 2 racks opening that some Terrans have been doing. But, you can get a spine crawler up in time, generally, especially with the positions being so far away like this. Yeah, so you just put a spine crawl up, generally on the left side of your hatchery, like in this case, so that it protects your ramp. That's a pretty big deal, because you can't just have the Marines running in your ramp. I don't know if you guys seen the way Frutu got eliminated from this GSL 4 season, but his spine crawler was actually out of position. I believe it was on Lost Temple, and the Terran just, kind of ran up into his main and killed a ton of his drones and pretty much won the game. So you definitely have to be careful when opening 14 hatch, even though it's, a lot of people still do versus Terran. In this scenario, yeah, my Terran player over here actually opted not to go for the 2 barracks. He did wall off on the low ground, which is pretty vindicative of, he doesn't want to be scouted easily, because this doesn't really allow the scouting drone in. So you have to be kind of thinking, okay, well, is he trying to do some type of one base play? Is he going to hide a bunch of tech on me? Maybe cloak banshees, maybe just like a Marine Marauder timing attack, maybe a delayed 2 barracks push. So you really have to be careful with that. And as you can see, I'm going to be sending my Overlord in pretty soon to figure out what's going on. I sent some Lings in. I don't see too much. I can see he walled off on the low ground, so still waiting things out right now, making some drones. Probably would have been a good idea to have a spine crawler up just for safety, but I actually didn't end up doing that. As you can see, I've got my 2 queens out. This is very important. You want to get your 2 queens as soon as your spawning pool finishes. You want 1 queen per hatch, and you basically you want to spawn some creep tumors first before you inject larvae, because there's really no point in injecting larvae, because you can't spend it all at that point. You don't have the economy to. So just drop 2 creep tumors, connect your base with creep and start spreading creep outward over here. He's going to send a Marine in to try to do a little bit of scouting, but I'm going to be able to pick that off with some Zerglings and the Queen pretty easily. So the reason why you want to get your creep spread, though, between bases especially, is because if you were to do some type of Banshee play, I could easily mobilize my Queens between the 2 bases to help take out the Banshees. So as you notice, I'm getting a quick Baneling's Nest right now. That's it's becoming a little bit more standard. It's not quite standard. Generally, you wait on the Baneling's Nest, but at this point, I'm just a little bit afraid that he might be 1 basing. Although, as I'm going to discover pretty soon, he expanded. I send the Overlord in, I can only see the factory and the barracks over here. And I see like a couple Marines, not too many. So I'm already starting to think, okay, this might be an expansion type build, but you really never know. He could be hiding more Marines, and this is all he chose to attack the Overlord with. So I'm going to send a couple Zerglings in to make sure. But going back to the Baneling Nest, it's never a bad idea to get the quick Baneling Nest, because it just makes you so much safer against any type of one base all-in play. It's very hard to deal with any type of like Marine Marauder, SCV, or Marine Marauder Hellion play if you don't have a Baneling Nest up. So I've got some Zerglings over here working on the destructible rocks. Hope to get those down pretty soon so I can get my gold base up. And looks like nothing too much over here. Starting to get my Spire up. Very standard. Getting Baneling Speed. Baneling Speed is essential because once they get stim, they can kite the living hell out of your Banelings even on creep. But once you get Baneling Speed, you know, you're faster than Marines even with stim as long as you're on creep. As soon as you get off the creep though, you've got to be careful, which is why I'm trying to spread my creep as much as possible. And if you notice, I'm spreading all my tumors at once. That's the way to do it. You want to have basically a cycle that you do. It's like, okay, I inject larva, now I know I gotta spread my creep tumors. And you want that extra queen to be able to get a couple more creep tumors out. As you can see, I'm making that in the production tab. So the Spire's almost finished. These rocks are almost down. Looks like my Terran player over here is he's making some siege tanks, so he's gonna go the typical siege tank and Marine with a couple Marauders. Typical bio play. Really strong play in general from Terran. Looks like the interesting thing about his build is he has a planetary fortress at the natural, and that's very uncommon. Generally, you know, they get a second orbital so they can get more mules. But sometimes this can be, you know, you're like, oh wow, he's gonna 2-base really hard off of this. So that could be a telltale sign of that. But you can't just say, okay, he's definitely gonna 2-base. So you have to prepare for the late game as well, the macro game. It's quite odd that he did this, but I guess he just feels more safe. I have heard that a lot of Zergs have been trying the Roachling all-in against Terran on the ladder on the American server, so that would certainly help to stave off any early aggression on the Zerg's part. As you can see, my Mutalisks are heading out and gonna try to do some harassment over here, but it looks like he's already got missile turrets up, so I probably won't be able to do too much. Beating my Mutalisks back. Very important if you're gonna go for Spire play, which I'd recommend obviously because it's just so strong in this matchup, that you really need to be active with your Mutalisks. You see a lot of players, they drop the Spire, it's like instinctive, but then they just let their Mutalisks sit around and don't do anything. And even I'm guilty of that, as you'll see in this replay. But you have to, that's something you have to be thinking about in your mind always. You want to be consciously saying, how can I harass the Terran with these Mutalisks?